Fear, an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Hunger. Fear and Hunger, a game I'm sure many of you out there are informed about and know plenty about. And I myself had heard plenty about the game and some interesting things about the game over many years it's been out now. For the ill-informed who don't know about this game, Fear and Hunger is a survival horror RPG with many rogue-like elements. I didn't want to call it a rogue-like because it's technically not, but it's also not a rogue-lite, which is a rogue-like. We're not going to get into that. It just has some rogue-like elements in the game, such as dungeon crawling and random loot generation, and also some randomization in its map layout. Releasing in 2018, developed by an individual to make a beautiful experience. A Finnish man, Miro Haverinen. I don't know if that's how you say it, but please correct me because I'm pretty sure I got it right because that's what Google tells me. I don't know what is wrong with that country as well. They seem to make some of the weirdest, oddest, just batshit insane indie games that I've ever seen, and honestly, I'm all here for it. Please, Finnish people, keep cooking. Developed on the RPG Maker game engine, which is a pretty easy to use game engine program that allows more new developers to get their foot in the door and really get a handle on how to make games, and also is very good for single dev teams. It's not hard to use, it's very approachable and very welcoming to newcomers to game development. Development of the game took place over 2 years by one man, which is insane to me. I do not want to see what that man's mind looked like for them 2 years as he was making this game and what ended up on the cutting room floor for this game. And the whole idea, as stated by Miro himself, was born from his school days. Wait, what? When he would ask thought-provoking questions to his many classmates about things like politics, global issues. Nah, I'm joking. He would ask morbid questions that all took place in his own dungeon, in which they were morally ambiguous, and you'd have to really think and ponder on them to really see what kind of person you truly are. Now, Fear and Hunger actually began life as Miro's academic thesis, of course, as it was for his schoolwork. And the overall tone for the world for Fear and Hunger came from many places. Silent Hill, Amnesia, Dark Souls, and if you're inspired by Dark Souls, of course you're inspired by the GOAT itself, Berserk. So I think it's very clear that Fear and Hunger is a love letter to a lot of different things. Classic video game horror, some of the best fantasy fiction that there is on the market, such as Berserk and many other manga as well, which he does pull from not only in this game but also his second game as well. Now, reception to Fear and Hunger amongst gamers and critics was very positive initially, and still to this day. A rather common criticism that I see displayed is the use of sexual violence is a bit overdone and at times feels unnecessary and almost there for the sake of it being there, more like a shock factor. This was something I was a bit worried about, as what Berserk does, for example, with its sexual violence, it toes the line very well. It uses its sexual violence to help influence its story and expand its story even further. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't get about Berserk. They think the sexual violence is there just for sexual violence and doesn't really add anything to the story. But in my opinion, without the sexual violence, you lose a lot of the story. And that is something I was very scared of for Fear and Hunger, was maybe that its sexual violence would not actually add anything to the story. So yeah, we're going there again. This is my second video on an indie game and we're already here again. So this is your warning. This game has sexual violence and a lot of it at some points. And there are some extreme gore and a lot of other disturbing topics. So honestly, this is just a general warning. Just be careful here now. Now, these critics, as always, are always wrong. They're never right. So let me dive into the game and really explore its narrative and its themes as well, looking at the gameplay, the story, characters, and of course the general message of Fear and Hunger. So right off rip, we are thrown straight into a character selection screen with 4 different options being available. Mercenary, thief, assassin, whatever brings the silver to the table. Mercenary is known for his dirty tactics in battle and crafty ways of gaining the advantage. Knight with pure and righteous ways of the warrior. Having been trained for combat since a child, Knight excels in close combat with different weaponry. Dark Priest, bearing no burden on such things as morality and ethics, gives Dark Priest an edge in blood magic. However, devoting oneself to magic has left his physical body weak. And Outlander. Hardened in the freezing winds of the north, Outlander is the epitome of survival. He knows all the tricks to stay alive, even in the most impossible of situations. Now, instantly, there is some amazing world building here with very good amount in such a short amount of time. This is just the first screen of the game and like 4 sentences, and we already get quite a lot of world building for the world of Fear and Hunger. We can very clearly see a medieval theme here, very much inspired by Berserk. as I'm going to keep saying throughout this video, with knights, mercenaries, priests, and the presence of the Outlander suggests that there is a central power in the world, and the outer lands are more untamed and not as controlled as this power would like to be. However, what I also do like a lot about these descriptions as well is they actually differentiate each of the characters very clearly enough to inform you about your initial decision on what you would like to pick. It's very clear that each of these characters fit a different role. Mercenary is meant to be sort of your rogue, thief character. Knight is more your tank / paladin, I guess. Priest is obviously your mage, sorcerer, and the Outlander seems to be more of a barbarian type of character. However, you are not given enough information to truly make cutthroat decisions. It's not clear which one's the best, such as the statement has left his physical body weak doesn't actually give you enough information to make a truly informed decision. We don't know how much weaker his body is, we just know he is weaker than the others. It's such a great way to do this, and it doesn't tell you exactly what you want. And this is one thing I love about Fear and Hunger. You are not told anything. You get no information about anything, honestly, and it's amazing. It means that you have to learn and remember what everything does, means, and what everything you get in the beginning. So these initial stats that you get aren't clear, but of course, if you experiment, you can figure out who is the best one for you, which I genuinely love a lot. Now, each of these characters are not just selectable insert characters that don't have their own backstory. Each have their own backstory, which are deep and rich in character development. And we are not even in the game yet. We're still in the fucking character selection, and now we're going to go into an opening intro. So let's go through each of these intros and analyze each of these characters and explore the world of Fear and Hunger a bit more. Let's start with the mercenary, or his canon name, Kahara. You are born with a soul of the endless that makes you yearn for freedom and forces you to push your creativity to its limits. So, he was born with the soul of the endless, whatever that means, and he yearns for freedom, meaning he wants to explore more and explore the world of Fear and Hunger, and it forces to push your creativity to its limits. So we can interpret that this character is going to be more about using your smarts than your physical strength. Which, honestly, after playing Mercenary, yeah, very true. With Mercenary, you want to avoid fights as much as possible, using things like lockpicking to avoid enemies and get around the map rather quick. You put your creativity to the test in the most harshest of environments. You were born and soon abandoned in the capital of the Eastern Sanctuaries, Jataya. A bit more backstory there. We know his backstory now. He was born and abandoned by his parents in a city called Jataya. You had to choose at a very young age to either become a pickpocket, a burglar, or try to struggle and lead an honest life. And now we are given 3 distinct options to choose from that influence not only our backstory, but also the gameplay, as each of these options give a range of different, I guess, rewards or perks to them. You can either become a pickpocket, which teaches you the ability steal, which allows you to steal items in the middle of battle that can't be found otherwise. Become a burglar teaches lockpick skill, which allows you to open some, not all, locked doors and chests on the map. And lead an honest life, which gives you 30 silver coins right off the start of the game. Honestly, it's amazing. I really do like this. Being able to choose your start and what items you want to take into you with the dungeon is amazing. It's a great way to encourage replayability and allows you to find a way that you like to play the game. But let's continue. Your life spent learning thievery certainly didn't go to waste. You learned to live with constant fear and danger. The crude streets of Jataya taught you a valuable lesson. As you grew older, you took part in various mercenary armies and learnt the dirtiest tricks to stay alive. You were taken in by a notorious veteran highwayman, and you joined his little band of criminals and ex-soldiers. During one of your many raids, your brigade got ambushed. The odds were seriously against you. You could have just abandoned your comrades and kept your life, or you could have fought to your last breath. And again, 2 more options. abandon your comrades, or fight to your last breath, both giving two very distinct options and perks to them. You travelled across the lands in your raids, and eventually settled down in the kingdom of Rondon, where silver was loose as long as you were up for getting your knife dirty. One day you got an ominous task from the officials of the kingdom. You are to be paid well in silver if you get a captain of a fabled mercenary army out of the dungeons of Rondon itself. From the dungeons of fear and hunger. The morbid place has been used as a wartime prison by the kingdom, and for some reason, they need an outside sword like yourself to infiltrate their very own stronghold. Something is clearly not right about this mission, and you have felt nausea since the moment you agreed on the job, but you're short on silver, and the reward is all that matters in the end. And you spent your last night in the kingdom, and finally we get our last options. Go drinking and get laid at the brothel, stock up on food for the mission, stock up on healing items for the mission, or run straight to your mission. All different choices which all give different advantages, which are all good in their own ways. And this ends Kahara's intro, so straight away we get reasons for him entering the actual dungeon of fear and hunger itself. It's a job. He's been paid to do it and he wants to do it as it pays very well. But we also get an interesting point. These dungeons are owned by the Kingdom of Rondon, so why are they getting an outside sword to go in and deal with their problem instead of them themselves doing it? Well, I think this indicates very much there is something wrong with the dungeons themselves, and even the kingdom fears them, as they don't want to go there themselves. So I think we should be scared straight away. Also, we're being tasked with retrieving a man for the Kingdom of Rondon, so we know what our target is straight away as soon as we start the game. But let's look at another character. Let's look at the Knight, or Das. You are born with a soul of domination that makes people around you bend to your will. You are a natural leader, but you might often be blind to self-criticism. If your birth sign wasn't enough to warrant a future of greatness, you were also born into a wealthy, noble family. At an early age, you were sent into training to become a holy knight of the Kingdom of Rondon. Training to become a squire was a harsh school that spared no one, no matter if you were from a noble origin or not. A practice sparring match between you and a well-seasoned squire took place at the central training grounds. It is said that a fighter shows their true colours in their first fight. This applied to you. When you saw a sword coming your way, you, and again, two more options, quickly step aside and dodge it, or raised your buckler in defense, giving two very different things depending on the option. As time went on, you proved out to be a gifted fighter and a valuable asset to the kingdom. However, the Kingdom of Rondon claimed to follow the will of the gods in its pursuit for more power, but all the rewards seemed to follow into the laps of the elite and the noble sitting comfortably behind the castle walls. Ruthlessly, the kingdom would expand its reign, reducing the feeble citadels to ashes and bloodstains. Poor women folk, whilst every man is slain, only sparing a child or two. The legend may grow. Your devotion was shaken. You were all but ready to retire from the army, but your family insisted. No, they demanded you stay as a holy knight, or else you would bring a great shame to their noble family. And again, two more choices, I'm going to keep saying this. Break ties with your family and run away, or listen to your family and stay as a holy knight. Some great insight into the Kingdom of Rondon itself. The Kingdom of Rondon is very militaristic. They show to want to have aggressive expansion and will use brute force to do it, killing everyone except women, of course, because you always got to keep women safe, and letting some of their children die. And I think that shows their brutality even more. They're willing to kill some children as well for it, and it honestly makes the Kingdom of Rondon seem much more threatening. Just as you were about to flee from the army, things took an unexpected turn for you. You met a captain of a small mercenary army who seemed to share the same ill will towards the Kingdom of Rondon as you did. The common folk were starting to gather around the mercenary leader, the guard, who shared humble origins similar to farmers and villagers alike. There was definitely something otherworldly in his stature. Lagarde saw potential in you, and with warm words, he almost seduced you to join his band of mercenaries. Thanks to your righteous discipline, high position in his army, in the Knights of the Midnight Sun, your army was growing fast in both size and influence in the western regions. Rondon would first use your services to their own benefit, but soon saw you more as a possible threat to their modern reigns. Something changed with Lagarde as well. He kept more to himself and studied ancient texts and the occult. He became obsessed with some relics and artifacts that gave you ominous feelings and terrible nightmares. Things would spiral towards madness, even more when Lagarde decided to raid the northern capital of Oldengard. Without a warning or negotiations, Lagarde killed everyone who stood in the way between him and this mysterious ancient relic. it was this small overblow, that was enough of an excuse for the Kingdom of Rondon to turn common folk against Legard and justify his imprisonment. As the troops of Rondon army marched towards your clearly smaller army, you had to choose which position to take in this coming encounter. Take the rear guard and manage defenses, or spearhead the coming assault. The Knights of the Midnight Sun lost the fight. Many of your comrades were slain, but managed to escape the battlefield. Legard was taken captive and to be used most likely as propaganda. You knew you didn't have much time before he'd be sentenced to death. You had to act fast. Even if it seemed like a suicide mission, you decided to save Legard from the prisons he was held in. Before leaving on your desperate journey, you decided to stock up on equipment and items, and we get the same choices that Kahara got at the end of his one. So now we get some more information about potentially who Kahara is going in for. We know Kahara is going into the dungeons of Fear and Hunger for someone, and the only person that we know about now that is imprisoned in the dungeons is Legard, this mercenary leader, and he seems to be very influential amongst the more common folk. But it sounds like he got lost in his own mind, becoming obsessed with the occult and artifacts, and it seems that he just murdered an entire village for an artifact itself. Very interesting, and it actually gives a very good insight into this character that we don't know anything about yet, Legard. Alright, let's look at Anki, the Dark Priest. You are born with the soul of the enlightened. You are always seeking restlessly for new knowledge and secrets hidden from the common folk. This trait started to show itself at a very young age, as you were chosen to become a dark priest upon the birth of you and your twin sister, typical to such occult rites. You were pitted against your sibling with ritual daggers and challenged to fight each other to the very last breath. Unfortunately for you, you were born with a fragile body, and your sister easily overpowered you and had her dagger on your neck, waiting for the final blow. She, however, showed mercy and withdrew her dagger. She stepped away from you as your high priest masters glared gleefully at the event unfolding before their very eyes. Choice here. You can either attack her or leave her. If you choose to strike your dagger to her spine while she walks away, you stroke your dagger to the spine of your sister and she collapsed to the ground. The high priest seemed especially pleased with this and prepared for you for your ascension ceremony. In the ascension ceremony, you were to resurrect your deceased sister with necromancy and use her as a ghoul. You did this, and the cold corpse of your sister brought a smile to your otherwise emotionless face. After your ascension to Dark Priesthood, you were to leave the temple grounds and learn occult on your own in your dark pilgrimage. When beginning your self-studies, you first had to choose the god you would dedicate your time to, and here we get the 4 gods that we initially get shown: Grogorath, Sylvian, Ulmir, and the God of the Depths, all who give their own abilities and perks for praying to them. You travelled across the western continent, learning about different gods, deities, blood magic, and all known sciences. Your studies didn't come without their merits. You were acknowledged by the top scholars of the modern times. You were finally granted a pass to the great libraries of the Kingdom of Rondon. You now had the collection of all known history and science at your grasp. You learned of a certain man who was prophesied to begin a new era of mankind, a man meant for greatness. But why would you need to share the spotlight of the gods with any mortal man? Prophecies are only for those who are weak enough to bend to their sorry fates. You need to find this man and learn more. To your current knowledge, he would be found imprisoned at the notorious dungeons of Fear and Hunger. And as we can see, Anki has another reason for wanting to hunt Legard. He has questions about this prophecy and becoming a god, and he wants to stop probably Legard from reaching that point, as he doesn't want to share the spotlight with him. Giving a very good insight into Anki as a character, he seems to be very jealous and does not want anyone to achieve any sort of good things in their life, and he wants everything for himself. His actions of striking his own sister down indicate this to me, that he doesn't want people to be above him and be seen as greater than him, and he is a very great person. Not as a person, but as someone who does achieve a lot. He's one of the greatest scholars in the land, and was identified by the Kingdom of Rondon as being worthy to access their grand library that has all of the entire history and science of the kingdom and probably the past kingdoms in it. Let's look at the final character now, Ragnvaldr, the Outlander. You are born with the soul of the tormented. you are destined to struggle in every step you take in life. Ultimately, this makes you stronger physically and tempers your iron will that rivals the will of the gods themselves. You had a balanced childhood in the city of Oldengard, with both your parents always present. Your father taught you in the art of war. Your very first step was to choose your weapon, and you can either choose to use a bow and arrows or an axe and a shield. Winters grew colder and summers shorter, which resulted a great hunger in the north. The fine men of Oldengard set sails to the unknown west in a desperate attempt to find food and riches to feed the people. You had grown into your manhood and boarded the ship after months of sailing. The sea saw no end, and the crew were struggling. Some laid weak under the deck, while some embraced the cold dark sea. As the weak met their fate, the rest indulged in the greatest sin, and you can now either choose to devour your fallen comrades embracing cannibalism, or you just don't give in and go hungry. As if the trip wasn't gloomy enough, when you finally found land, it was something no one in the civilized world could have ever imagined. From the far reaches of the world, you found the dark continent of Vinland. Ah yes, anime references to Hunter x Hunter and Vinland Saga. I'm joking. Real life examples real quick. This character is obviously inspired by Scandinavian Viking, and Vinland is America in real life. Now, the dark continent in real life often referred to Africa due to its very difficult climate and also very limited resources, making survival very difficult for travelers from Europe going down there and exploring Africa. And Vinland, of course, is America, which is sort of seen as the promised land to the Europeans back in these times. But the dark continent of Vinland, to me, indicates that they both combine them, indicating that Vinland is not this luxury, beautiful place that is seen as sort of the end goal for people. It is dark and difficult to survive and potentially evil. The continent had never been touched by a civilized man. The land was tainted by ancient deities and gods you had never even heard of. The things you witnessed there left a mark in you that could never be washed away. So again, it's indicating that a more greater darkness has influenced this Vinland. Some of your comrades lost their minds, while others tried to pillage anything worthwhile before leaving this macabre place. And you can either take souvenirs from Vinland or don't touch anything and flee back to your ship. Unfortunately, the relics you brought from the trip tainted you and formed a panophobia, a fear of everything. Now you get this if you actually take relics, but if you run away you don't get this. And this is decided with a coin flip. An ancient artifact was brought from the Dark Continent. You knew it was a mistake, but the choice wasn't in your hands. You knew something bad would follow sooner or later. The bad omens would soon reveal themselves, as sometime after your return during one of your many hunting trips, you came back to your village only to witness your worst fears come to life. You witnessed your home village burning, your family slain, and the artifact stolen. Those who survived the raid described the army and its captain. He was the famous captain from the fabled mercenary army, Knights of the Midnight Sun. You immediately packed and left after him. The man would witness the iron will tempered, both in the dark continent of Vinland, and you get a lost selection of choices for items. Okay, let's quickly just analyze this. So we instantly see that, yes, Dars's intro about a raid on a village for artifacts we see here, and Ragnvalder was someone who was affected by it. His village was completely destroyed and many people he knows were killed in it, and it gives him a reason for wanting to enter the dungeons of fear and hunger. He is hunting Logard, not to save him or to get answers, but to kill him. So with all four of these intros covered, it gives some great insight into the world of fear and hunger and gives each character their own reason for wanting to enter the dungeon themselves, and gives some good character insight into these characters as well. For my choice, I chose to play as the mercenary, and I decided to obtain lockpicking in Dash to help me explore the world more effectively, and not only that, a bit faster. Okay, so before we dive into my experience with Fear and Hunger, I kind of just wanted to insert this note here of what I was thinking at the time when playing this. When I was playing this, I obviously didn't look at all the backstories for these characters, and in my opinion, not doing this is actually a bit of a detriment to the game overall. These backstories actually give a lot of world building to the game, and I think a big problem with this game is actually trying to get into its world building. This game is not like Dark Souls. It doesn't have a lot of lore built into its items like it does with item descriptions. This game is simple. Its lore is told through dialogue and books. That's the only way you can find it, and cutscenes like the opening cutscenes. So I think not making these cutscenes mandatory viewing upon opening the game actually makes it more difficult to engage with for someone who wants to be more immersed in the world. I at times felt lost during my playthrough, and I actually had to go out and research a lot on the Wikipedias and videos just to understand what I was doing and what stuff meant and what the world actually was built up like. The gods, for example, in Anki's one, are barely talked about in general gameplay. Yes, you can read books and discover more about them, but you're not going to do that. The average player who's playing this game probably won't learn a lot about them, and they'll need to do their own research. And this is something that it definitely takes from Dark Souls. It's almost a meme now that people that play Dark Souls and all of From Software's games, they don't actually understand the lore when they play the game. They have to watch videos about it to understand it. Now, me, yes, I watch videos about it, but that's more for my own enjoyment because I actually like watching these videos. I actually do like exploring the lore in Dark Souls, but Fear and Hunger, I think, does have a bit of a struggle with actually presenting this lore to you. I don't know if I'm just dumb, I might just be dumb, but I felt I never really found lore that often. With items being random loot drops, it means you can go through the entire game without really finding stuff out about this world, and I honestly don't really like that. Yes, this game wants you to pull pieces out on multiple different runs, but the game has a save system, so to me it almost discourages doing multiple runs from beginning to end when you die. So, I don't know, it just feels like this game clashes at times, and I don't know, it just felt a bit odd to me. But opening wise, it is an okay opening. I wasn't super gripped by it, but I was intrigued. And now let's get into my experience with Fear and Hunger. Spawning into the game, we are instantly thrown into a world covered in a fog, and on your left, a dead horse with crows pecking at it. A dead horse is laying down here, and we are given 3 options: to investigate, very normal; to leave, also very normal; or to beat it up, that is not normal. Investigating the horse, we conclude the horse has been dead for about a week, indicating to me that this area is rather low on foot traffic, as I'm sure a car in practically perfect working condition would have been looted by anyone if this world is inspired by Berserk. Exploring some more, we eventually hear some distant barking, and if you hang around too long, some dogs will spawn, and they will most likely kill you. Actually entering the dungeon, it's dark and quiet, eerily quiet, and it is terrifying. It is so dark you can barely see anything in front of you, and it immerses you in this dark horror. This dungeon is dark, damp and gloomy, and you really feel it. Inspecting the rooms in the first area, you'll eventually find a little girl in a cage. A very strange sight, and it makes you question what this dungeon's purpose actually is. Why is there a child here, and why is she locked up? So if you're hopefully a good person, you'll take the little girl and try to keep her safe and help her escape the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, but you have a job that you need to fulfill first, so it's better to keep her with you and safe instead of this cage. And also, there's a flag on the wall that displays the greatest country in the world, the shithole, England. By the entrance, a guest book is on the table with some writing in it. This nightmare has taken its toll on me. I am devolving into something far lesser than the man I once was. All the high morals and ethics have no value here. The things I've done to survive. There is no place for a little miscreant like me in the warmth of this sun anymore. I am a part of these dungeons now, part of this never-ending nightmare, just one more cog in this machine of fear and hunger. Hey look, the name of the game again. In a way, I find it comforting. I have a definite place in this wicked world, but I am writing this here as a warning for anyone who happens to step down into this darkness. Do leave, if it is still possible. Well, a bit ominous of a message, but this is like 5 minutes into the game and it does an amazing job actually setting up the dungeon itself and the actual effect it has on people. It appears that psychologically this dungeon will affect people in some extreme ways, making you feel like they can't even escape the dungeon even though we just entered it, which honestly makes it more scary than it probably actually is. This isn't a normal place. I think we will very quickly learn that. It's something more sinister is afoot here, causing problems to occur and changes people completely. And in this area, you will most likely encounter your first enemy, the prison guard. Okay, let's talk combat of Fear and Hunger now. What's that? Oh, that's just a full cock and balls. Now, I'm not opposed to cock and balls, but you know, I do like to be asked out to dinner first. Combat is brutal, and I think, while it being a very simple system, a very simple RPG maker sort of combat system, there are 3 key points that I think make the game amazingly good. And these are: 1, no fucking information. As I mentioned earlier, you are not told anything, so even how to deal with enemies is almost impossible. What attacks are good against them, what you should attack, how to kill them, what their weaknesses are, what their attacks do to you, how much health they have. You don't know any of this information, and you just have to learn it. The prison guard is a great starter enemy because you very quickly learn things. His main attack, the hack attack with his meat cleaver, will cut your arms off if you let him, so you have to learn to use your attacks to better effectively deal with enemies' attacks as well. It's not about just defeating them, it's about negating as much damage you take as well. Enemies attack with certain limbs, as I just mentioned, and this links to the second point, targeting specific body parts. Enemies attack with certain limbs, so cutting said limb off prevents an attack from occurring, but also cutting some enemies' heads or hearts or certain parts of their body off will instantly kill them. But the problem is that it's not always easy to hit these parts of the body, and you have to hit other parts of the body to increase your chances of hitting them. For the prison guard, cutting both their legs off will make them fall over, making it easier to hit their head. But the problem with that is then you have to take an attack from them. This system I very quickly fell in love with. It is a great system that makes you have to think every single moment to moment gameplay. You have to always be thinking about what you're doing, and it does such a good job at this. And you'll very quickly learn what each body part does for each enemy and what ones you want to cut off to deal with an enemy effectively. As the best way to play this game is to quickly dispatch enemies as fast as possible. And even when you cut all their limbs off, enemies can still attack you with the third point, gambling. We all love coin flips, and Fear and Hunger, you are only as good as Lady Luck allows you to be. A coin flip will determine if an enemy can use their special attack. If you call the hit, they miss it and you dodge it, not taking any damage. But if you fail the coin flip, pretty much all but guarantees death for you, or something even worse in the case of the prison guard. These attacks are normally very powerful, with some, as I said, causing instant death, but others do just do an insane amount of damage where you have to play around them. You can be winning a fight completely and fail a coin flip and it loses you the fight because you failed it. This is a bit annoying at times, but honestly it makes the world so much better, and it actually ties the combat into the story of the world. It's very clear that this world is very oppressive and very dark and not meant to be fair on people, and the combat reflects this perfectly. This game's combat actually makes its narrative even stronger because the struggles that you have to go through in combat are then reflected in the actual story and the dungeon itself. The dark, depressing, damp place that is pushing you away and not wanting you to progress any further, the combat does this as well, pushing you down and making your life as miserable as possible. And when you start losing limbs, yeah, it gets really miserable at times. Now, of course, with combat, you have a nice range of weapons, spells, and items to use to deal with enemies in a way that you see fit, but the game often guides you to deal with enemies in a very specific way, i.e. the prison guard, cut their left arm off, cut their stinger off, and then cut both their legs off. Yes, that is a stinger and not a cock and balls that I've blurred, but it looks very much like a cock and balls, so I'm blurring it for my own sanity. Now, moving through the first area of the game and into this second area, we come to a ritual. I guess we'll leave them for now and come back to them, and we run into our first NPC, Buckman. Oh, no wait, you're a sane one, right? Yes, of course. I'd be dead by now. I don't have time for this. Listen, I've been lost in these dungeons for what feels like a lifetime. My sense of time has become blurry. It might be years, months, or I fear even just weeks. I find this line very funny, as first it reads a bit odd. It sounds backwards, as the normal saying is, has it been weeks, months, or years? But he says it backwards, showing how truly fucked his sense of time has become. He doesn't know how long he's been in here. It could be years, it could be months, it could have been just weeks, but it appears that he has done some completely deplorable things in order to survive in the dungeons. Also, that carriage out front might have been his, so he might have just been here for a week and he's already gone insane, truly showing the effects the dungeons have on people and their psychology. I just can't handle it anymore. I feel my mind giving up already. I just can't. I don't know what business you got here, but if I were you, I'd run out as fast as possible. If escaping this place is even possible anymore, that is. A good question, which we know from the opening text for each character, and each character has their own reasons for entering the dungeon. They're not going to leave for no reason. They're here for a very specific reason, and they're very determined to achieve their goals. What was that? Now, Buckman here has his own quest line as well, attached to other characters like the Crow Mauler, but I'm not going to cover all the quest lines entirely. I don't want this video to bloat to unreasonable sizes, but I'll say this, I do actually like these side quests. I think they add a lot to the game overall, and they're done more in the style of Dark Souls, where they're a bit harder to figure out and you kind of just have to explore a lot to figure them out. But I think they're good fun, and they actually add quite a lot of world building to the game overall. But as I said, I'm not going to cover them in this video because I don't want this video to bloat too much. Covering the main narrative and a lot of the text with that, it's already quite a lot, and I do want to say same with editing this video because it is not my full-time thing. So just know that I'm not covering them side quests in this video, but maybe if I do a follow-up video, I might cover these. I think it'd be interesting to explore the world a bit more, but obviously that's only if you guys want to see that video. And moving up to the next room, we find a torture room, and if you try to leave, we now run into a not rather friendly looking fellow. A wretched looking person walks out from the shadows. This is the Fucking hell, I cannot say this. Torture. The torture. The torture.
Oh, you are not the one I expected. Who might you be? I have something to show you in case you be interested. Would you like to see it?
And we are given an option, and depending on what you choose, can potentially give wildly different outcomes. If you choose to look at what this man is trying to sell you, he will knock you out by beating you over the head, strap you down to a table and cut all your limbs off and then cut your genitals off. He is not a very good torturer, but he'd make a very good butcher in my opinion, and I hate to say it again, he's very much inspired by the torturer from Berserk. I'm going to keep saying it. Now, if you choose to do what I did and not take what he is trying to sell you, he doesn't really like that.
Are you sure? This is your last chance.
The wretched man has saliva dripping from his mouth. He seems clearly excited. Again, options, but still, his rather bulgy head was not going to convince me to take whatever he was trying to sell me.
Don't you know who you're dealing with here? This is my domain.
And like any disagreement in England, it's resolved straight away with violence. And of course, you just kill him and you can obtain the second floor key from him, which can take you down into the blood pit. I also killed these dark priests and the man on the cross because he makes a bit of a funny noise. And if you carry on, you can meet our first other player character in the world, the Dark Priest or Anki. Huh, you are with sane minds still? Please, leave me. I'm not here to make acquaintances. I thought to see what worth chatting with you would bring. Who are you? The Dark Priest seems clearly frustrated by you. My name is Anki, Priest of Destruction. Did that feed your curiosity? What are you doing here? What does it look like? I can see how a brute like yourself wouldn't understand the meanings of libraries. What a rather fine gentleman, but his inclusion here to me shows that dark magic has a very big effect on the world. The fact that the Dark Priest is here looking at libraries and their books to me shows that there is great knowledge here in the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, and of course this power will probably govern the world itself. But let's leave Anki alone as he seems a bit immersed in his books and I don't want to annoy him. Leaving through a secret bookshelf with a mock-up book that you can find earlier, we now run into our second character, the Outlander, or Ragnvaldr. Hold it! I see. Seems like you still retain your sanity. In a way, it's reassuring to see that I'm not completely alone here. Tell me, are you evil? Well, a bit up front, but I don't think I am, so no. Only time will tell. You'd be surprised what you are capable of once you have stayed here long enough. But your presence here just means the dungeons will claim one more victim, and the evil residing here will grow that much stronger. If I were you, I'd try to escape these ancient walls by any means necessary. For your sake, I hope our paths don't cross again here. Stay cautious in these dungeons. The evil in this place is of a pure kind. It's not here just to torment us. It's not here to spread its roots into the surrounding world. Even if the dungeon's vile traps and decrepit monsters would lead you to believe otherwise, its interests are already past this world, and its place a relic from its long history. Who are you? You can call me Ragnvaldr. I'm an outlander. You seem rather familiar with this evil. Yes. My kind, the people of Oldengard. We found the dark continent of Vinland from the far reaches of the west. Again, as I said earlier, this is amazing world building. Even if you didn't read or go through the intros for each of these characters, you're given their intros here. You see what these characters have been through and you see their general characters. Anki is very reserved, but Ragnvaldr does seem to be a very normal person. Yes, he seems a bit angry, and you can definitely tell, but he has definitely reasons for being here, and he seems completely sane of mind. The moment you lay your eyes on the crooked mountains and twisted forests of those lands, you feel the presence of a greater evil. It's the same evil that resides here. Why are you here? I am here to find a relic that a certain person took from my people. This man is in prison somewhere deep down below. So, as we can see, this basically confirms that he is after Lagarde, which was very obvious earlier, but the person imprisoned here is Lagarde, which is the person the mercenary is after as well. So, your reasons for being there and your objectives are interlinked, but they are clashing a bit, because Ragnvaldr wants him dead, but Kahara wants to capture him and keep him safe, and Anki wants answers from him, and Das wants to just save him. They all want the same objective, but they're all going to do different things once they achieve it. Exploring a little bit more, we can find a small dagger which we can give to the girl we are keeping care of, and we find something which I cannot show on YouTube in the top left of this area, and it's a massive orgy of people which are all wearing bunny masks, and the funny part is that you can join in, which will fully regain your health or your body stat. To the right we see a large statue and you can pray to one of the gods of fear and hunger, and I mentioned them earlier, so I guess we should talk about the gods of fear and hunger. Now, of course, we can only pray to a handful of gods here, but I think it's important that we go over each and every god that is in Fear and Hunger, and just to get a bit more background on the actual history of the world and their roles in the world. So gods are split into two subgroups of gods, the old gods and the new gods. Within the world of Fear and Hunger, there is no one religion that rules above all. There are many religions who all follow their own god and have their own beliefs and ways of following them. But then you may be asking, what's the difference between an old god and new gods? And no, it's not just the age of when they were. The old gods are seen as the true gods of the world of Fear and Hunger, the ones who have actual influence in the world and the ones that actually can change it. They embody some sort of trait that is a part of the world and have gifted humanity with many things. Now, these gods left long ago, but their influence was so powerful that there are still traces of these gods left in the world, and they still influence the world today. It is also believed that the old gods are truly immortal and will forever be in charge of the world. Now, there are 5 old gods, so let's go over each one. Grogoroth, the destroyer of man, the god of destruction and human sacrifices. Grogoroth is the influence for a lot of the darker rituals and scenes and actions that occur in the game of Fear and Hunger. Sacrifices, blood rituals, and he himself gifted mankind with the gift of blood magic, and spells which are used offensively such as Black Orb and Hurting, very clearly showing his thing. He is all about evil and destruction. His actual thing of human sacrifice is very much pulled from Moloch from the Bible. Now, I'm not super religious or even very familiar with the Bible, and I did some very basic background research just to try to get an idea of where these characters' ideas came from, and this was the one I could find the most link to. But not only that, there are many gods in fiction which he could be pulled from. The god Hans from Berserk, he could be pulled from a couple of them, but Moloch was definitely the strongest connection I could find, with especially human sacrificing and blood rituals, which he is all about. Moving on to the second god and the antithesis of Grogoroth, we have Sylvian, the goddess of fertility, love, lust, and creation. Sylvian is the one that created men and women, even the world itself. In order to create mankind, she ordered a deity known as Vetruvia to create mankind in her desired image. Not in her own image, but in the one that she wanted to make. Now, because of this, she is viewed as the mother god. And of course, this is very much the story of Adam and Eve, with her creating mankind and the world. And having two godlike figures be responsible for the creation of humans links it well to Greek mythology, with Prometheus and Athena being the ones responsible for creating human life. Now, her being the god of lust, love, and marriage and everything, you would think it would be just normal love and marriage, but no. This world isn't normal, and the view of love and marriage that she bestowed upon humanity is twisted. Gods are on such a different level and plane of existence and the way that they think and feel about things that their version of love is completely disconnected to the way that we think about love. Sylvian, the way that she gifted love to humanity was when they perform a marriage, their souls merge and their bodies become one. A true union of two people. Not what we would do in real life, where we put rings on each other and then say we will be with each other forever. People truly become connected, and in game you can marry other characters and become the marriage. A disgusting creature that is horrific, but it's honestly kind of beautiful in a way. That God sees this as true love, when two souls fully merge and become one. Two completely separate beings being content with just being together wholly and fully. Honestly, a great god in my opinion, and I honestly think Sylvian is the best god in this game, as she is probably the most interesting out of all of them, with such an interesting idea behind her with the marriage. Now, Grogoroth and Sylvian themselves had an offspring themselves, Vinshuka, the god of nature, and he himself represents the flow of life itself. Sylvian represents birth and Grogoroth represents death. And of course, like all life, there needs to be a stage in between that, actual living. So Vinshuka represents that himself, the flow of life, and his two parents being the two gods who wholly represent life and death is very poetic, and he is the one that balances life itself. He himself takes on many forms throughout the world of Fear and Hunger, with many depictions and drawings of him in books being completely different from one another, and it depicts how life can change so drastically from moment to moment. Now, his name of course shares a very strong resemblance to Vishnu, the Hindu god who is a part of a triad of gods, the Trimurti. Man, we are really starting to get out my ballpark here. If I get anything wrong, I'm really sorry. This is just where my research took me, but there's a point here. Let me cook. The Trimurti in Hinduism consists of three gods: Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, Brahman, the creator, and Shiva, the destroyer. Hey, look, it's a mirror to the three gods in this game. You have a destroyer, a creator, and a preserver. And this connects back to Christianity, with the gods creating a holy trinity of sorts, and you'll often see that with religions in fiction and even some real life religions. There's often three figures that sort of create life and sort of maintain it. And in the world of Fear and Hunger, these 3 gods are Grogorth, Sylvian, and Vinshuka. But these are not the only old gods in this world. The god of the depths, worshipped by those outcasted in society and left in the darkness. Her body is dormant, and inside her body lies the Gauntlet, the final area of the game which we will eventually get to, and she's located in the very bottom of the Fear and Hunger dungeon. Her body is of some importance to the game's overall narrative, and this god is the one responsible for the Fear and Hunger dungeon existing in the first place, and the one that changes its shape. This god encompasses darkness, and according to Ragnvalda, the god of the depths is worshipped by those who are forsaken and forgotten. Now interestingly, earlier Ragnvalda said the darkness from the dungeon is similar to that of Vinland, potentially hinting at a link between the dark continent of Vinland and the god of the depths. This god also has power of vermin and I guess pests, linking it to another god hand from Berserk, Conrad, a being who spreads pestilence to the mortal world through diseased rodents. And the last god is Rhea, the trick to the moon god, and he's the last god to still be observing mankind. Where all other gods have left, he is still there. He does not like humanity. He is the only god who didn't share any sort of gift with mankind, and he doesn't believe that humans deserve to have the same rights as that of the true gods, as he throughout the 2 games in Fear and Hunger 1 and 2 at times tried to diminish the influence of those who have ascended to godhood, and he tries to prevent people from ascending to godhood. And talking about people who ascend to godhood, the new gods. After the departure of the old gods, the kingdoms of the world slowly started to decay, and mankind started to lose a lot of their faith and directions in their overall life in general. Without gods being there to pray to, you very quickly lose hope in world. So a group of people decided to ascend to godhood. Within this, there were 5 new people who came together to ascend to godhood. Included amongst these 5 was Francois the Dominating One, Nilvan the Endless One, Varteli the Enlightened One, Shamara the Tormented One, and Nosramus the Forgotten One. Nosramus is interesting as he never actually ascended to godhood, and is the reason he became the Forgotten One, as he never became a new god. He just instantly faded into the thing of legend, being one of the 5 who decided they wanted to actually change the world. The 4 who ascended proceeded to tear down the legacy of the old gods and create a new age where mankind could decide its own fate by choosing their own gods. However, their influence over the world would only be that of a pale imitation to that of the old gods, and eventually this story of the fellowship of 5 people trying to ascend to godhood would slowly fade into the thing of legend, and they would not be worshipped over the old gods, with the old gods returning to being the most prominent god figures in the world. Now, there is one last group of gods who don't really fit into either group, but they're more similar to older gods in their terms of power. These are ascended gods. These are mortal men like the new gods who ascended to godhood, but they don't stop at new gods. New gods' power is very limited in comparison to old gods. These ascended gods are that of old gods. They are very powerful and have extreme influence over the world. So let's talk about them now. Ascended gods are most likely destined to become gods by a greater power, potentially the old gods themselves. And one of these names that we see throughout the game is Ulmir. Ulmir was born in Jataya, raised by a virgin mother, gathered his 12 This is just Jesus. Ulmir is Jesus in Fear and Hunger. He was born half man, half god to a virgin mother. He very quickly attracted a lot of people to his cause with 12 apostles, and the powers at the time felt so threatened by him, they sentenced him to death by crucifixion. It's just Jesus. He even returns to his most loyal followers, a resurrection of sorts, but in this he never died. He was always immortal, and he just carried on basically. Now Ulmir does get a bit more interesting in the second game, but in this first game he is very boring in my opinion. He is just Jesus, but I will be very excited to cover him in the second game because there is something I actually like about him. Alright, let's ignore the gods now and actually move forward with the game by blowing open some of this rubble to move past, and there's more fucking dogs, for fuck's sake, I died. Alright, let's roll it back. This is pretty much how your early hours of Fear and Hunger will go. You'll die constantly from random stuff that you just don't know how to deal with and you just have to learn. So yeah, it's great fun. At no point during my entire playthrough of Fear and Hunger did I ever feel like I knew what the fuck was happening or what I should do to combat something. I was constantly dying, so if you're having this experience, it's okay. This is what's meant to happen. It's fine. Even at times you'll feel completely lost. And I find that funny, but the way that the game actually guides you throughout the world is by hunting down food, because your hunger is always going down. The hunger mechanic is an ingenious way to make you remember where you have been and where you need to go, because food is the most important items in this game and you need to get your protein. Each area does not respawn items nor enemies, so you can't farm items to keep yourself alive. You need to keep moving forward in order to survive, even though that might be scary to you. Fear and Hunger has such a cool way, in my opinion, of actually merging not only JRPG and its world, but also its survival horror aspects with item management and limited supplies. It makes such an interesting mashup and a very unique experience. Okay, now we're actually back to the thicket. Let's actually go in. The thicket is a large tree with roots spreading deep into the earth, which you're able to enter. Now, it's commented that you feel a terrible presence entering the thicket. I wonder what that could be. Now, to proceed in the thicket, you have to touch certain parts of the wall to push them in, and basically that means you'll be headbutting the wall over and over again until you find the way to go through, and you can find an infinite source of lucky coins here. Very fun. And here, Ragnvalda is down in the next level. Oh, you again. You're still alive? Ah, I guess I misjudged you. This place is truly curious, isn't it? They say these are the intestines of the god of the depths. That means you're inside of an older god, the god of the depths. Yeah, yes. He's not that well-known god, as he is mostly worshipped by those who are forsaken and forgotten. His people often shy away from the light and prefer dark corners of the earth. You've seen the cave dwellers yet? They prove my point quite well. The god of the depths is responsible for the layout of these dungeons. He is ever changing his shape to challenge the visitors. I tried to please him if I were to delve deeper. Have you found what you're looking for? Nech, not yet. There is a man in prison somewhere in these dungeons. That man has something that shouldn't belong to any human. I'm here to retrieve it, or perhaps to get rid of the man while at it. He carries an ominous energy with him. I'm not sure what to think of him. Moving deeper into the thicket, you will eventually reach the catacombs, where you'll find this purple pulsating organ, and like any normal person, I chose to destroy it. A bit further along, you'll come across a man chained up in a room, and this is the guard, the man you came here for. Your journey has finally led you to this meeting. He's still alive, just barely. The man gets up. Now that you see him better, you realise his body has gone through an intense torture with different scars and marks filling out his skinny torso. His gaunt cheeks and distant eyes only strengthen the idea that this man has seen hell and survived it. Ugh. Ooh, what? I can't remember a thing. You remember who you are? The god. That's my name, I think. I don't remember anything besides my name. I seem to have amnesia. And if you have Ragnvalda with you, he'll make comments, and that's something I really like. Having different companions in your party leads to different dialogues. It's not necessarily amnesia per se. It could be possible for your mind to block recent traumatizing events. Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't want to stay here. That much I know for certain. But I feel pretty weak. You think I could join your party for the time being? Lagard is the main reason we came to the dungeon in the first place, and is your primary objective. Lagard was stated earlier, is the leader of a Mercurial League, known as the Knights of the Midnight Sun. And if his appearance didn't give away enough, already he is very much, and I mean very much, inspired by Griffith. Now after getting the guard, you can try to leave, but he will not follow you, saying that there is something deeper in the dungeon that he needs to find. So you're about to leave? I'm afraid we must part our ways here. Still have unfinished business here in the darkness. And you get two options, either to remain with Lagard and delve deeper, or escape. Escaping, it leads to ending E. Escape. You escape the dungeons of fear and hunger. Part of you doesn't believe this to be the truth. You can still smell all the blood and gore that seeps through the seams of the ancient stone walls of the dungeon. You can still feel the gaze of the hundreds of past warriors sacrificed in the pools of blood, now left to rot. You can still feel the pressure of the never-ending darkness that the underground caverns offered you. You can still hear the distant flapping of wings. You still feel dizzy, just imagining the rail tracks that lead poor souls deeper to the madness, all the way to the altar of darkness. You delve too deep. You know it yourself too. No man could ever return from that deep. You take one more look at the fortress just to make sure you really did make it out. And it does this cool transition where you see a prison guard again. Now, of course, this is the most unsatisfying ending that you can achieve in the game. Reason why it's called Ending E. And I know the game may seem a bit short here, but that's kind of intentional. This is the shortest ending to go for, except speedruns. But even then, it took me a good few hours to actually reach this point and get this ending. But it's meant to encourage you to return to the dungeon and go deeper to get more answers. None of your questions are answered in this ending, and you don't even achieve your main objective of getting Lagard out of the dungeon. You could even interpret this ending that you never actually truly escaped the dungeon, with it physically pulling you back or mentally trapping you, with you never being able to escape the horrors that you experienced in the dungeon. An ending, while yes, you are still alive, it is wildly unsatisfying, so let's go back into the dungeons and go even deeper with Lagard. Now, a door blocks your path and you need to get some sort of key. The only way to go any further now is to go down the pit you saw in the blood pit. By using a lever in the prison where you can find Kahara as well, you can unlock a lift which lowers you down into the abyss, and now you reach the cavern. Such a large cavern was hidden beneath the dungeons. If the tree didn't make it obvious enough, there is something rather strange about this dungeon, something unnatural in its layout and design. But quick side note, I love this game's way of doing world exploration. It's very clearly inspired by Dark Souls in the way that you unlock different shortcuts and entrances and ways of getting into areas with doing actions in other areas. It's such a fun way to do it, and it makes the world feel a lot more alive and more interesting to explore at times as well. And down here we meet a rather funny looking fellow, Pocket Cat. Well, hello stranger. How are you doing on this wonderful day? What is so wonderful about it? New days bring new challenges. What is life without challenges? Life is sure peculiar like that, huh? Life is peculiar when you are peculiar. Got that right. I'm liking you already. I know we just met, but I feel a connection forming here already. I hope you don't mind if I ask you straight. Living humans are divided into two groups, yes? There are children of light, those destined to walk under the bright sun. Those people do well in all hardships of life. They have dear humans who they want to return to. Even in the darkest hour, they can feel the warmth of their loved ones in their heart and gain extra courage from that. Then in the opposite end of the spectrum, there are people of darkness. Those humans often driven to depression and sorrow because of life's peculiar ways. But they have learnt how to live with those feelings. In fact, they have grown to love the ever-present darkness within. Those humans are able to draw energy from the darkness. They are not dependent on other people. They only need the darkness, their old friend. So humans of light and darkness, which one are you? And you're given a choice of light or dark. It doesn't really matter. You can pick whatever you want. I see, I see. I'm surprised to hear that, to be honest. I hope you don't let these dungeons affect you in that way. Well, anyways, I'm a merchant of sorts. I sell precious items and weapons for those in need. The funny thing is, I don't want your gold or silver. I will trade items for human children. What the fuck have you guys got me playing? Bring them to me, and I'll make it worth your while. My pockets are very, very deep, you see. Now, of course, you can trade the little girl that you've been protecting the entire time to Pocket Cat, and you can obtain a couple of very powerful items, such as the Claymore, the Necronomicon, the Book of Enlightenment, and the Book of Forgotten Memories. All very powerful items. However, you only get one trade with him, especially if you trade him the little girl. If you want to trade with him, and you don't want to trade the little girl to him, you can trade him a demon child, which you can make with a spell which you interpret it that you impregnate a dead body which births a demon baby. And again, berserk because demon baby. But who is this Pocket Cat, and why is he such a dapper looking fellow? Well, not a lot is actually known about him in general. Even with the second game, we still don't know a lot about him or what his actual character is or who he is himself. The only thing we do know is that he seems to serve the god Rear, and him wanting the little girl hints at her being important in some way. With Rear not wanting humanity to reach the same level as the old gods, Pocket Cat could be a figure and sort of a spearhead for him doing his objective of preventing humanity from achieving a more powerful status in the overall world and its structure. But other than that, we don't actually get a lot of character development even when we meet him after this first meeting. He just seems to really like children, and from the words he says, he either does one of three things. He either eats them, kills them, or he does what the prison guard does to you if you die as Gahara. Now, why do I say this? Well, if you refuse his offer initially and then speak to him again, he says, "Why, hello, stranger. And hello, little one. What a pretty little face you are. I like your hips and your ankles especially. How about I make an offer you cannot refuse? Just for you, my special customer. I will trade the little girl for an item of your choosing." Now, he does something rather sneaky here. If you're not careful when speaking to him, you might accidentally just trade the little girl for something that you don't want and you'll feel scammed. It doesn't sort of like slowly bring you into it. It's like instantly brings up the options to trade. It doesn't ask if you even want to trade with him. It just assumes you're going to trade with him, and it can be very sneaky at times. Now, of course, I didn't trade the little girl with him because, of course, I'm not a monster. So he does seem a bit disappointed by this action, though. Oh, how disappointing. You sure about this? They're off for last. Come back if you change your mind. Okay, let's leave this rather weird fellow behind, and crossing the bridge we come across Moonless, a wolf companion you can recruit by throwing rotten meat at her. Not to sound like a broken record, but again, Berserk reference. I think the creator really liked Berserk. And even this dog itself has a backstory about being abandoned by a pack and being forced to live on her own. But she is a good girl and she is a very powerful companion and very worth recruiting. I just didn't recruit her because I already had 4 party members already. While letting Moonless have a munch, you can move into level 5, the Mines. And here the little girl for me had a bit of a mental breakdown due to her mind bar getting too low. This is due to your sanity getting too low, and it shows how you have to balance the mind a lot better. Mind is used in battle to do special abilities, and if it gets too low, you lose your sanity. Now, of course, this will probably happen a lot earlier for you, but it was a good point in time for me, and I thought it was kind of funny that after we talked to the weird pedophile cat who wants to take the little girl and do whatever he wants to her, she has a mental breakdown, and I just found that a bit funny. And you're probably asking, how do you restore mind? Well, like any good person, you use drinks or you abuse substances like tobacco and opium. So of course, when the little girl has a bit of a mental breakdown, you start forcing booze and substances in her face and force her to consume them. Now, I also came across a big fish who rocked my shit initially, but resetting, we now can come to level 6, the mines. Going left, we can find an assault occurring, and we can find the knight character from the opening being physically attacked by goblins. Now, the funny part about the goblins is the prison guards, yeah, that's a stinger. All the other enemies that have a phallic object in that area, it's a stinger. But these goblin guys, it is just full cock and balls. It is literally called a penis, which I just find funny for some reason because everything else is a stinger. It's just a bit funny, and I'm a child, so of course I have to cut it off. Killing the cave dwellers, you can save Das. Ah, thank goodness. Do you know what they did to me? Ah, I cannot talk about it, no. And if you have Lagarde in your party, Lagarde, oh my god, you're still alive. Do I know you? What do you mean? It's me, Doris. Sorry, I can't remember a thing. Ah, I'm a part of your army, the Knights of the Midnight Sun. Does that ring any bells? Sorry. Where did you meet? I found him imprisoned. Ah, I see. I'm glad you helped him out. I knew the King of Rondon kept him here. He was sentenced to death, so I hurried for him as fast as possible. Listen, I've promised to protect him with my life, just as he has done for me in the past. I want to join your party. So now we can get Das as well as a party member. If I didn't have 4 members, I would have taken her, and at one point I will replace Ragnvalda with her due to him getting the pollen affliction, which is a bit of an annoyance because it is like rage where they just sort of attack at random and they can kill themselves or other party members. Also, the game didn't want to give me worm juice to fix it, so fuck me, yeah. Venturing deeper, we find a village of cave dwellers, and in the last building, in the Altar of Darkness, we can find the Cube of the Depths, an item which allows us to get access to deeper parts of the dungeon, and above this building, the God of the Depths lies dormant with this really cool visual of just a mouth appearing. Now, the Cube of the Depths is the item that Ragnvalda had in his village and the item that Lagarde hunted for and killed an entire village for. So this item is of extreme importance to the overall world of Fear and Hunger. Now, returning to the catacombs and actually using the Cube of the Depths on the door, we can now go through the ancient door, allowing us to access the ancient city, an area which appears to be in the distant past. Moving through the tombs and reaching the other side, we reach Mahabre, also known as the City of the Gods. This is where the old gods used to reside, and now the new gods reside. And a big mechanic of this area is using the Cube of the Depths to travel between 2 points in time, one in the past and one in the present. Now, I really love this area. I'm always a massive fan of these kingdoms which look heavenly, and I hate to say it again, this city just reminds me of Lordran from Dark Souls. The almost blinding yellow of the buildings makes it stand out so much as something of extreme importance in the entire world of Fear and Hunger. Fitting for a place the gods reside. Now, moving through the area, you'll meet a stone guy who will request you retrieve 3 items for him to let you pass to the Temple of the Gods, and also he tasks you with a bit of a personal trial. Human, you are not worthy of passing through the gates of eternity. In this tribunal, suffer through your personal trials, torment on the loss of your close ones. Only through the pain can you reach enlightenment and understand your place in this world. If you can go through all this without still losing your original goals and dreams, only then shall I let you pass. Where should I start? And the nameless figurine repeats the lines that I just stated. The figurine doesn't seem to react to your questions at all. Seems like he has lost his mind with the time spent down in the darkness. See, even the darkness has affected the so-called City of the Gods. Well, let's hunt for these 3 items that you wanted us to find. 3 different souls, which seem to be 3 souls of newer gods. Exploring, you'll eventually come to the Tower of the Endless, and heading up it, you'll find the only bed in the game you do not need to coin flip for, suggesting that this place is completely safe and there is no threat in the general vicinity. Now, resting in it, you are sent into a dream. As you fall asleep, restless dreams take over your consciousness. Feverish dreams make you twist and turn in your bed as you fall deeper and deeper. As you open your eyes, you find yourself in the misty back streets of the kingdom of Rondon. You visited the city numerous times before, which is why you recognize the streets clearly, but there is something uncanny about its houses and street lamps. Something feels off. You can freely explore this area and really get immersed in the kingdom of Rondon itself, and it's exactly like its namesake London, wet, dark, and fucking miserable. Exploring, we find a poster which states that 13 children have been kidnapped. Very nice. And a bit further along, we walk into a fucking brothel. For fuck's sake, can we not have sex for 5 minutes?
I'm tired, boss.
Moving past all the sex, we can find ourself, or Kahara, and we see what his life was like before he entered the dungeon. Celeste, you're still doing this job with the little one on the way and all?
Yeah, well, there's folks that fancy stuff like this. If anything, I feel like there's more gentleman folks asking for my services these days.
What the fuck? Men sure are weird like that. This isn't right. I don't like it.
Honey, I don't know what to say. Girls gotta eat, and now I got a little one to feed as well.
I'm a man. I should take care of you too. I really wish I did not use my own custom name, which I identify with for this character now.
The world doesn't always go the way we'd want.
No, for all my life I've drifted along wherever the wind took me, but it doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to stay at the mercy of the winds or the gods. I might have the answer. I got a new gig a few days ago. It's a pretty daunting task, but it will get us the silver we need. I'm leaving tomorrow. When I get back, things will change. You wait and see.
Honey, just promise you do come back.
Yeah. Well, we clearly see the reason Kahara is wanting to delve into the dungeons. We knew that it was for a job, but we didn't know why he took the job on. But we very clearly see now. His lover, Celeste, is someone who is pregnant, potentially with his child, but she's a prostitute, so it might not be his child. But he wants to free her from the grips of prostitution. A very noble act, and honestly, it is a good thing for entering the dungeon. It's not a selfish reason for entering the dungeon, like wanting to kill someone. He just wants to get his family out of the situation they're in. Now, if you leave the brothel and move up to another door, you'll come to a hallway where you'll see a child calling from out the darkness, but then something pulls it back in and then starts eating it with a meow, finishing it off. This is probably Pocket Cat doing what he does to children. We know that children have been kidnapped, and a story in the game tells a tale of Pocket Cat kidnapping children, and he is a deity that sort of is like a boogeyman for children to probably get them to not run around at night. Continuing to explore Rondon, you can find Anki on a sacrificial cross like we saw at the beginning of the game. I'm ready, Ulmir. Take me. I'm ready to meet my end. This is as far as I got. I can't get any satisfaction. There is no fulfillment. I've reached the limits this feeble body can withstand. There is no silver lining waiting at the end. The purpose of us all is to slither under the cold sun of the gods have set above us. And he now has revelations and visions. What's that? These visions! I see, understand. Let me down from here. Well, we can see when it happened. He got visions from gods, probably because he is very faithful to them, and they revealed a potential new god, and he wants to get answers of why he has been chosen as a prophesized one to become a god, i.e. Lagard. And after he's taken down, we can now speak to the people doing the sacrifice. These new gods, they will bring us paradise. These past millennia, we've been at the mercy of the older gods and their reign. It's time for mankind to take matters into their own hands with the rise of the new gods. Well, we can clearly see the state of the world. People have lost faith in the old gods and they want new gods. Not that the new gods just sort of forced their way in. They were very open to new gods and changing their lives, probably for the better. Moving up a bit further, we can now come across a plague doctor with a couple dead bodies around him. You brought this to yourself. Sins must be paid. Talking to the sick man, he states, I blame the other gods. Why did they curse us with this sickness? Now, I stated earlier, the older gods left Mahabharata and the world itself, and with the world lacking the gods that helped maintain it, the world went into chaos and started to decay itself, and the people started to blame the older gods entirely, and now were desired some new gods to take their places, as they believed that they could not change the world that was being created by them. Moving out of the city, we are transported to the Oldengard forests, and we see Ragnvalda surrounded by dead bodies, which include people dressed like him and some knights. This is the story that Ragnvalda started his journey with, the death of his village. What is this? Olve, are you still alive? Ragnvalda came. They came while you were gone. Those knights. Who were they? The Knights of the Midnight Sun. The Knights of the Midnight Sun? The pretty man. The looks of a fair maiden. The captain. He wanted what we brought from the Vinland. I think I'm going to sleep now. Olve, rest in peace. Bjorn. And Ragnvalda darts off to a cabin, and we chase him to the cabin, and eventually he will emerge from the cabin. It is very clear that his family is dead. This can't be. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. Entering the cabin, we find an old woman. This is not the scene I was expecting, and she engages us in combat. Eventually, she transforms into the Skin Granny, and after defeating her, we are shown the final cutscene for a selectable character with Darth and Lagarde. They do believe you're the one from the prophecies. Those ancient texts are but child's wordplay. Of course, that doesn't mean I shouldn't use them to my advantage. But really, many things are scarily accurate in prophecy. Talks about a fair-haired man and the one who rivals God in both power and beauty. Ha! Well, I thought all the older gods were ugly as hell. Don't tell me you buy all that stuff too. Nilvan of the Noon Gods is supposedly beautiful, just as the Tormented One used to be. The text also speaks, he who unites the warring states, not by the power of the golden staff, but by the power of a dozen pitchforks. Well, all the kings hate me at this point, so that one line I can agree with. I will strive to unify these lands, be it in prophecies or not, no matter the cost. But I feel like I'm really close to achieving my goals, but the last step is not clear. It is still shrouded in the mist. I'm not certain if this is the path to achieve all this. What do you mean? You're just one step away from founding your own kingdom, becoming one of the most fabled rulers of our time. You'd make a great ruler, I'm sure of it. Common people love you already. I'm sure of it, she says. What difference would it make anyway? The history has proven time and time again that order, virtue, tranquility do not last. I need something definite, something pure. I need to ascend above the kings and queens of our times. The last step isn't shrouded in the mist. It's waiting in the depths of the darkness. Lagarde, I need to ask what this campaign in the north is all about. I don't quite understand the importance of expanding our reign all the way over there. Frankly, I'm afraid such a campaign could have negative impact on your reputation. Thank you for your honest words, Darth. However, my mind is set. The campaign in the north is vital to my plans. They have something that belongs to me. Something that belongs to you? What are you talking about? I have to reach greater heights. This is the only way. After this, it fades to white and a bare-breasted new god appears before us. Nilvan. The god glances at the girl briefly. Oh, new one. The girl seems nervous around the new god. I must ask you a favor. Our time has come. This form of existence isn't the answer we were looking for. For mankind to break free, we need more. We need something equal in size and stature to them. Nilvan rubs her slightly swollen belly. Please, I ask you, just get my child out of here. Take her to the heart of darkness. I would gladly gift my soul to you if you were to agree on these terms. I agree. Thank you. Nilvan gives one last gaze to the girl. The girl then backs away behind you. With the dialogue concluded, we awake from the dream and obtain the endless soul. And okay, let's pause real quick and let's just talk about what just happened here. I know I haven't been doing that a lot this video, and that's because I don't feel like I need to really explain anything or really sort of dig into anything. But I think this is the one section where I'm going to actually dig now. So we met Lagarde again, and we see his many reasons for wanting to achieve godhood. He wants to be able to change the world in a significant way, but there's a problem. I think Lagarde has clouded his own judgment, and I think that's very apparent with him not wanting to look through the mist for it, but down deep below in the darkness. The prophecy of Lagarde leading the world, uniting the kingdoms by many pitchforks and not one golden staff, goes directly against what he pushes for in becoming a new god. Him becoming a new god means he would lead by a golden staff, by one big figure that is better than everyone, not something that is equal and on the same level as those who follow. Lagarde should have been a character that led people to create something they could live by, not becoming something that they worship. Lagarde became too ambitious, he became too full of himself, and this would eventually lead to his downfall in general, with the kingdoms coming against him because they knew what he was going to do, and I even think the new gods plotted against him. The new gods here, as Nilvan said, they created something that can be on level with that of the old gods. Something as powerful as an ascended god, such as Ormir. So the little girl is a ascended god, or is going to become one, as we'll see later in the video, and she is extremely powerful. She has the power to basically completely change the level play in the world and actually make a difference. Lagarde, I don't think would ever be able to achieve that. Yes, as a new god, he would be able to achieve that for a certain amount of time, but not the extent that the world needs. It needs a complete and true change in its world. But as I said, Lagarde would probably only get to the level of a new god. But why do I say that? Well, the way that Lagarde ascends in his ending, which I will cover later, is the same way the new gods ascended, and not the way that we see an old god ascend to godhood. To me, the new gods are false. They're not real gods. They just obtain power of the older gods and wield that to create change in the world. Why is the child then linked to Lagarde then? Early we see that the girl feels something towards Lagarde, and long story short, Lagarde is the father to the child. But why did the new gods choose Lagarde if he is not going to reach that sort of potential? Well, we don't really know why. Gods and power levels and how they work is a mystery to us. We're not revealed that in this world, and there's not a clear example of when this happens. The only gods that have a child that we know of are Grogorath and Sylvian, and he's only in the second game, so we don't have an example to pull from. But I have an idea. I think when a new god and someone who has the potential to become a new god, or another new god themselves, have a child, that child will become something like Ulmir. Ulmir was born from a virgin mother and from a god himself. The woman was not a god or a new god or an old god or anything. She was just a woman. But the new god, so Nilvan obviously had a child with Lagarde in sort of the same way that probably Ulmir was born. So we can probably interpret that the girl is kind of a second coming of Ulmir in that sort of sense, a being that would be on par with his power level. It's not revealed when this child was conceived. We don't even know if it was done with his knowledge or if she tricked him or just did what basically God did and impregnate a random woman being a virgin mother, but she impregnated herself, so it doesn't really work. I don't know. It's very confusing in my opinion, and it creates a lot of questions that never really get answered. It's a very interesting world. I do like all these questions where I'm thinking about what it means to the world and what potential change could occur, and that's a strong but, it feels very disconnected. This reveal of all these characters' backstories and why they're here, and the reveal of Lagarde, it's kind of like just thrown up. It feels like we haven't really gotten anything. We haven't got any answers of who these characters are. Then all of a sudden we get back to back to back to back character development for all of them, and Lagarde especially, a character we basically know nothing about, other than like the few hints we get about him. It's very odd in my opinion. Yes, it's rich lore and very interesting in my opinion, but I don't know, it just doesn't really do anything for me. It's very like lore dumpy and like just sort of thrown up. This is the sort of thing you would read on like a Wikipedia just to learn about the game, but it's just here in one go. I would have loved to learn flashbacks. If you take Lagarde around the dungeon, you'll get these flashbacks of these events that happened in his life and these things that he says, but it's just all at once. Now, yes, at least everyone will get to see it, but I don't know, it just sort of answers a lot of the questions that you would have had and why Lagarde was even here in the first place, and why we're here in the first place, and why Lagarde is so important. I don't know. Well, let's carry on. You have to do some more world exploration, and eventually you have to face two more of the new gods. One in the Grand Library, the Enlightened one, Valte, and the Tormented one, Chamara. Killing both, you will obtain all of the items you need in order to proceed to the Temple of the Gods. Proceeding past the Golem figure, you will eventually run into Francois, the fourth god, and you will be given a choice. You can either go back in time to kill the final new god and go towards a new path of a different ending, or push forward and proceed to a different ending. If you ignore Francois' words and he wants you to go back in time and kill him, he will send his dogs after you to try to stop you from proceeding on your current path. The new gods very clearly do not want the current path that it's going. The new gods know that they made a mistake with their actions, and they know that they can't change the world that the old gods used to. Nilvan made it very clear that she wants a new god to emerge and create a better world for everyone. Going into the next room, you will find the final organ. Destroying it is viewed as a monumental moment and has chosen a direction of fate. But whose organs were these? Well, returning to the Altar of Darkness, we see the God of the Depths with its mouth agape, and you can enter the last area of the game, the Gauntlet. And this entire area has no story to it. It is just there to piss you off and kill you over and over and over again until you eventually have to take a break from the game for 2 hours and then come back to it. But eventually, you will make your way through the entire area and you'll come to a massive pile of bodies, or one big marriage, and depending if you have the little girl with you, you will get a different ending depending on it. I did have the little girl with me, and I got this ending. The girl is looking at the darkness. You cannot see anything in there. What is it? The girl has a concentrated and serious expression on her face. The girl is rolling around seemingly in pain, and we enter the final boss fight, and man, this is horrific. The little girl who you spent the entire time protecting and trying to keep safe eventually starts to become disfigured and is completely out of your control, and she slowly becomes something less and less recognizable until she finally reaches and ascends to true godhood, becoming an ascended god, a god whose influence is that on par with the old gods, the god of fear and hunger. Now, when you are victorious in the battle, you're not. She kills you anyway and you reach the final level of the world, level 10, the bottom. Why do you resist? The thought must have crossed your mind at some point. The thought that you delved too deep. The thought that this would be a one-way trip. So instead of fighting the inevitable, why not embrace it? Just lay down and rest. There is beauty in this darkness that can be harnessed and used to usher in something new. And that ends the game. You never escape the dungeons. Your efforts would go unsung, but your part in the greater scheme of things was vital nevertheless. You had a vital part in the birth of a new god, one that is not a mere new god, but one that rivals the older gods. You had first-hand experience witnessing the coming paradigm shift the world is to go through in the new era, an era of a newborn god, the god of fear and hunger. They'll come to know this day as the Cruel Age. An age where a human-born god would finally rise after millennia of mankind's struggle as the feeble new gods. Maybe your fate was an act out of mercy, the last trace of compassion the newborn god shed after her true ascension. Your demise was peaceful after all. Ending A, the god of fear and hunger. Now, when I finally beat the game, I was honestly stunned. I still had so many questions about this world that I really wanted to get answered. So, of course, I started doing my own research and I started playing around with gaming, going after some of the other endings. And with some research and some obvious sort of tells, it becomes very clear that the little girl is very special. She is the daughter of Nilvan, of course. Nilvan straight away states this to us, but who is her father? It is stated she is human-born. Nilvan is technically still human, but technically as well she's also a god, but it is stated the child is human-born. So to me, this states that the little girl is from a human, and looking around, it's very quickly apparent that Lagarde and Nilvan are the parents of this child. It is not clear when this child was conceived, but it was conceived at some point, and this child becomes a sort of chosen one because Lagarde is a prophesized one. But I don't think the prophecy is the way that Lagarde interprets it. Lagarde is prophesized to be the father of a god, not a god himself, and when he tries to become a god, it ends in a horrific way. The girl was always destined to become a god, and Lagarde misinterpreted the prophecy that many people have told him. And Lagarde, when it was prophesied that he would create a new kingdom that would be brought by many pitchforks and not one golden staff, he went directly against this prophecy. He tried to rule the world with one golden staff. If you go for his ending, it becomes very apparent he does not understand what his prophecy was trying to tell him. He was not trying to win the will of the people, he was just trying to become powerful. This ending is 100% canon, as the next game, Fear and Hunger 2, the god of fear and hunger appears, meaning that the little girl canonically does become the god of fear and hunger. A bit of a side note, her form is very interesting to me. It appears as a scarecrow, which is interesting. Fear and hunger are two things you can associate with a scarecrow. Fear, of course, scarecrows can be scary at times. It is a common symbol of fear, and it also is used to scare off birds as they fear it. And hunger, well, scarecrows do control what can grow. Certain birds will be prevented from eating food that is planted because of scarecrows, but scarecrows are not 100% foolproof, and it is a symbol of food. So the scarecrow is a symbol of both fear and hunger itself. Also, The little girl's transformation, to me, it symbolizes just the actual depravity of this world. The little girl represents the last shred of innocence in this world, and we do what her mother demands of us, and we take her to the heart of darkness, and she is completely transformed. She is changed completely, and that little girl that we have been taking care of is gone. It's turned into something horrific, something disgusting, something all-powerful, and something we cannot comprehend. And it shows the actual depravity of this world. Alright, now let's explore some of the other endings of Fear and Hunger, and let's talk about the actual narrative of it now. Okay, so Fear and Hunger has quite a lot of endings in general, but let's go over each of them rather quickly. I'm not going into them too much, I'm just going to sort of give a general outline. Ending B is the same as ending A, minus the little girl. So instead of facing up against the god of Fear and Hunger, you face up against Grogorath, and once defeating him, instead of losing your body, you lose your mind, and you never escape the dungeon itself, with Grogorath showing you visions of what the world's true meaning is. Ending C has the god ascend and becoming new god, becoming the Yellow King, but you reject him and fight him and eventually kill him. Ending C2, or the prophecy ending, is the same as the previous C, but instead of rejecting Lagard, you embrace him and allow him to become god, and you escape the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. Ending D, New God, where instead of Lagard ascending to the throne, the player ascends to the throne, where you fight Sylvian in the end, and you can choose how you want to rule as a god. But like all new gods, you eventually fade into the thing of legends and become forgotten. And the S endings, or character-specific endings, which are all dependent on the character you play. Kahara gets the happy ending after retrieving treasure from treasure maps given to you by Isaiah, allows you to obtain the king's crown and basically become ungodly rich and free himself and his lover from the poverty that they are experiencing in the world. A very happy ending for such a morbid game. Das, the true god of Fear and Hunger, well, a title like that, it better be good. Das finds the god dead, and she uses a rebirth scroll in order to make him immortal, and he becomes a god there and then and ascends the throne following the C endings. Very good ending in my opinion, and honestly it is a great way to show how Lagard is completely lost. Anki, the Enlightenment ending, basically instead of becoming a god, he chooses to obtain knowledge. And Ragnvalder, the god of ultra violence. That is such a cool title, where Ragnvalder has to kill every key figure in the dungeon, and then he leaves vowing to hunt evil across the lands. Now of course these are very basic breakdowns of each of the endings, but most of these endings, except a couple, can actually very easily coexist with one another. Now, I was going to save this analysis for the second video, or Fear and Hunger 2, but I kind of want to dive into what I think the actual ending of Fear and Hunger 1 is, and its overall message as well. There are 9 endings in Fear and Hunger, 5 base endings, A through E, and then 4 S endings. But of course, there is one canon event that happened here. Because there's a sequel, it can't be interpreted that there are multiple endings. So, I'm going to state things which are confirmed in Fear and Hunger 2, but I'm not going to state them in this video. So, this is not going to be a full analysis because I want to save this for the next video, of course, where I talk about Fear and Hunger 2 and analyze that game. But let's go over each of the endings. So, the god of Fear and Hunger, it appears in Fear and Hunger 2 as I stated earlier, meaning that ending A is canonical, meaning that one of the characters must die. This is not something that doesn't happen, this must happen. This is the only way the girl gets to the end, is with the help of one of the characters who dies. So who is it? Well, we have to look to Fear and Hunger 2 to get some clues. Now initially I thought it might have been Ragnvalder, because Ragnvalder seems like the only one that would go to the lengths to actually go that deep. Also, he seems like the only person that would care about the little girl, so that was my initial thought. But in Fear and Hunger 2, there is a character that is of his ancestry, meaning it can't be Ragnvalder because both his family died, his wife and his child, meaning he needed to have another child for this person to exist. So we can strike that off the list, and that probably means he actually achieved his S ending, becoming the god of ultra violence, and he escaped the dungeon after killing everything in it. A great ending for Ragnvalder, and makes him an amazing character as he truly found true vengeance and just killed evil in the world, as that is what he vows to do. Okay, Anki, it can't be Anki because in the second game we can find books that he wrote. With him being gifted with knowledge, this very much ties into his character by using his knowledge to spread knowledge itself. A great ending for Anki, and it suits his character. And now we get into the last two, Kahara and Das. Now, Das would actually fit this perfectly well if her ending did not tie into Lagard. Spoilers for Fear and Hunger 2, Lagard appears in Fear and Hunger 2, and there's kind of an Easter egg where if you hit him, his skin falls off, and it reveals the fleshless body that he gets when Das revives him, meaning that her S ending is canon. Okay, editing Croc here. As I was editing this video and actually making it and finalizing it, a video for someone who actually knows what he's talking about with this game in terms of its lore was made, and they were talking about the actual endings for this game. Now, he stated that he believes that the S ending for Das is not canon, and he does give some good points about how the Kaiser and the Ghoul, the guard we'll call him, don't match up in terms of their characters. Now, I think this is a bit of a moot point, because characters can change drastically over time, and we don't really know what Lagarde was actually like. We're viewing Lagarde in this state through Darce's eyes, so we don't really get a fair look at his character because we don't get any interactions with him. But I'm going to put another point. Lagarde is canonically dead if Ragnvalder's S ending is true, because he's dead. That's why Ragnvalder continues his fight and kills all evil. So that's my point, and that's why I still think it's canon. Anyway, let me get back to my original points now. But he also is the Yellow King in Fear and Hunger 2, meaning he did ascend to the new god throne. So both Darce's S ending and the C ending, or C2 ending, are canon. So we've got a nice bit of path here, meaning that the only person that can be killed is Kahara. And even the creator of the game stated that in Fear and Hunger 2, the lack of Kahara even being mentioned at all speaks volumes, and yes, it does. Kahara was forgotten. It states in the ending of A that you are forgotten. You're an unsung hero that brought a new age of the gods. So Kahara was just forgotten, and him not having a child or any sort of ancestry, it ties in. His lover was a prostitute. The child she was rearing probably wasn't Kahara's, and his lineage probably ended there. A very tragic ending for a man who went into the dungeons with pure intentions to try help the ones that he loved. But that's the thing, this world is not fair. Those who enter for selfless reasons do not get a nice fate. All the ones who went in for selfish reasons all survived the events of Fear and Hunger. It starts with Ragnvalder, who, searching for food, him and many of his people from Oldengard go to Vinland, but they find dark artifacts. They bring these artifacts back to their village. This is brought to the attention of Lagarde, who, becoming obsessed with the occult and the gods, kills the entire village to steal the artifact, the Cube of the Depths. This action is then brought up to the Kingdom of Rondon, who never liked Lagarde and always wanted to get rid of him, and then use this excuse to then capture him and throw him into the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. Now, when this is done, Anki is revealed visions from gods, who reveal Lagarde as a prophesized one and someone who is to become a new god. Anki is obsessed with this, so he chases Lagarde into the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. Ragnvalder wants him dead, so he chases him into the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, and Darce wants to save him, so she chases Lagarde into the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. Kahara is then approached by the officials of the Kingdom of Rondon and asked to enter the dungeons of Fear and Hunger to retrieve Lagarde, probably to stop him from being freed. But Kahara only goes in for the money. He doesn't go in for any personal reason. They all enter the dungeon. Ragnvalder goes in and probably finds Lagarde dead, and then proceeds to kill everything else in the dungeon, eventually leaving and vowing to hunt all evil in the world. Anki achieves enlightenment. Darce finds Lagarde dead but revives him, and Kahara finds the little girl. And Kahara goes on an adventure that he never intended to. He goes deeper and deeper and deeper. He never intended to go as deep as he did, but he seems to keep going, with Nilvan asking a favor of him, and he agrees to do it because he does seem to be a rather good person. He wants to be helpful to people and he wants to save people, and he probably thought that he was saving this little girl until it was too late. Fear and Hunger's world is dark. It's depressing, it's decrepit, and it's depraved. And its overall message is that even in the most tough situations, you can succeed, but often there are powers above you which can completely prevent you from doing anything and will completely stop you in your track. Fear and Hunger is used to show the actual depravity and how scary humans can be. I am of the belief that the enemies in the game, like the prison guards, are people. They were people at one point, but the dungeon changed them completely and made them these monsters that you have to fight. It's meant to be like a visual metaphor of the evil that people can reach. And yeah, it's pretty scary. Things like rape, self-mutilation is depraved, and that's what I took away from the game. It's meant to be a visual metaphor of the actual depravity that humans can reach due to them losing faith and actual purpose in life in general. As the god of the depths, to me, represents people of no faith. Not that you don't have religious beliefs, but you just have no faith in life. There is nothing you want to pursue. You're directionless. You're just primal, I guess. You're just a dark void that just doesn't believe in anything or want to follow anything. It's a very interesting game, Fear and Hunger in general, and if I had to score it on my Croc rating, I'd probably give it a 4. Why? Well, there were a lot of bugs that were pissing me off. The game crashed quite a bit for me, and I black screened or got stuck on terrain. There are things at times that just annoyed me, but I think it's a very solid game, and it is a bit simple at times as well. So that's why it gets a 4 for me. It's very close to a 5, I will be honest, especially for the price it is. It's dirt cheap. I'd recommend picking it up at any time. It's great fun, and I think it's a very unique experience that you'll never get to experience in any other game other than its sequel, of course. But yeah, I think I need a bit of a break. I think this game might have affected me more than probably it shows. It's a very dark, depraved game, so again, be warned if you want to play this game. Hey, thanks for watching. This video was a bit harder to make due to the game's weirder nature, but I hope you enjoyed. Quick thank you for everyone new showing all the support. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll definitely do Fear and Hunger 2 at some point. Probably not next, because I think I need a bit of a break, and I also want to play some other games at the moment, but maybe soon. Maybe it'll be the first video of the new year. But again, thank you for watching. That's enough waffling from me. See you around, Crocodile.